Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the dark metal corridors of Kepler Station. The mining station was quiet at this hour. Most of the crew was sleeping, but Jake had work to do. A broken mining drill in Sector 7 needed fixing, and it could not wait until morning. He carried his heavy toolbox in one hand and held a bright flashlight in the other. The station's lights were dimmed during night hours to save power. Jake knew these corridors well after working here for 3 years. He was the best mechanic on the station, and everyone knew it. The mining station orbited a dead planet far from Earth. It was a lonely place, but Jake liked the quiet. He could focus on his work without people bothering him all the time. The pay was good too, much better than what he could make fixing cars back on Earth. Jake reached the transport bay and climbed into his maintenance suit. The suit was like a small robot that he wore around his body. It had strong metal arms and legs that could lift heavy things. It also had tools built into the arms. Jake used it to fix the big mining equipment that was too dangerous for humans to work on without protection. The suit hummed to life as Jake started it up. He walked through the airlock and stepped outside the station. Space was dark and cold around him, but the suit kept him safe. He could see the dead planet below, gray and lifeless. Far away, the system's sun was just a tiny, bright dot. Jake flew the suit toward Sector 7. The mining equipment was spread out across a wide area outside the station. Giant drills, conveyor belts, and processing machines worked day and night to dig valuable metals from the planet's surface. But one of the main drills had stopped working yesterday, and the crew chief was angry about the lost time. As Jake flew over the equipment, something caught his eye. Far away from the normal work area, near some old storage containers, he saw something that should not be there. It was big and white, and it was not moving. Jake changed direction and flew toward the strange object. As he got closer, he could see it was not a piece of equipment. It was alive, or at least it had been alive. The thing was huge, maybe 12 feet tall, with a long neck and tail. It looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, but its skin was pure white, almost glowing in the darkness. Jake landed his suit near the creature and turned on all his lights. The dragon was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Its scales were like pearls, reflecting the light in soft colors. Its head was as big as Jake's entire body, with a long snout full of sharp teeth. Even lying still, it looked dangerous, but Jake could see that the creature was hurt badly. Dark blood covered its body in many places. Its back legs were twisted in a wrong way, and its tail was not moving at all. The dragon's eyes were closed, but Jake could see its chest moving up and down slowly. It was still breathing. Jake had never seen anything like this creature before. The station's computer files had information about thousands of alien species, but nothing like this dragon. Most aliens were small and weak compared to humans. This thing was a predator, a hunter. It could probably kill a human with one bite, but as Jake looked at the wounded dragon, he did not feel afraid. He felt sorry for it. The creature was hurt and alone, far from its home, whatever that might be. Jake knew what it was like to be alone. He opened his suit's communication system and called the station. "Control, this is Jake. I found something out here." "What kind of something, Jake?" came the reply from the night shift controller. "It's hard to explain. Can you run a scan on my location?" There was a pause, then, "Jake, our sensors show a large life form at your position. What is it?" "It looks like a dragon." "A big white dragon. It's hurt really bad." Another pause, longer. This time, Jake listened carefully. "Get away from that thing right now. We're reading its biosignature, and it's not in our database. It could be dangerous." "It's not dangerous," Jake said. "It can't even move. I think its back is broken." "Jake, that's an order. Get back to the station now. We'll send a security team to deal with it." Jake looked at the dragon again. He knew what a security team would do. They would either shoot it or leave it to die. Neither option seemed right. To Jake, the creature had not asked to be here. Something had happened to it, something bad. "Control, I'm going to help it," Jake said. "Jake, no, you don't know what that thing is. It could be some kind of weapon or trap." But Jake had already turned off his radio. He moved his suit closer to the dragon and knelt down beside its head. The creature's eyes opened slowly. They were the color of ice, pale blue and clear. They looked at Jake with what seemed like surprise. Then something strange happened. Jake felt a pressure in his mind, like someone was trying to talk to him without words. He felt fear and pain, but not his own. The feelings were coming from the dragon. Jake had heard of telepathic aliens before, but he had never met one. Most humans could not receive telepathic messages anyway. But somehow, Jake could feel what the dragon was feeling. It was scared and hurt and very tired. "Hey there," Jake said out loud, not knowing if the creature could understand him. "I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help." The dragon's eyes focused on Jake's suit. The pressure in Jake's mind changed, becoming less fearful and more curious. Jake got the impression that the dragon was trying to figure out what he was. Jake looked at the dragon's injuries more carefully. The wounds were not from any animal or natural disaster. They were too clean, too precise. Someone had done this to the creature on purpose. The cuts looked like they came from energy weapons, the kind that space pirates used. "Someone did this to you," Jake said. "They hurt you and left you here to die." The dragon's eyes closed for a moment, and Jake felt a wave of sadness from the creature's mind. Then the eyes opened again, and Jake felt something else. Hope. The dragon was hoping that Jake would help it. Jake made his decision. He was going to help this creature no matter what his bosses said. He had always been good at fixing things that were broken. Maybe he could fix this dragon too. Jake stood up and walked around the dragon, studying its injuries. The worst damage was to its spine, about halfway down its back. The energy weapons had cut deep, probably severing the nerves that controlled the creature's back legs and tail. On a human, this would mean permanent paralysis, but Jake was not ready to give up. He had seen similar damage in the station's machinery. When power cables got cut, they could be repaired or replaced. Maybe the dragon's nerves could be fixed too. The first step was to get the creature to safety. Jake activated his suit's lifting system and carefully picked up the dragon. It was heavier than he expected, but the suit was strong enough to carry it. The dragon did not resist. It seemed to understand that Jake was trying to help. Jake flew slowly back toward the station, carrying the wounded dragon. He knew he was breaking rules and probably putting his job at risk, but he also knew he was doing the right thing. Sometimes Jake thought doing the right thing was more important than following orders. As he flew through the darkness of space, Jake felt the dragon's mind touching his again. This time, the feeling was different. It was gratitude. The creature was thanking him for not leaving it to die alone. Jake smiled inside his helmet. He was going to save this dragon, no matter what it took. Jake brought the wounded dragon into his workshop, the largest room in his quarters. He had to move several pieces of equipment to make space for the creature. The dragon was too big to fit on any normal bed or table, so Jake laid it carefully. On the floor, on top of some thick blankets, the workshop was Jake's private space, where he worked on special projects and kept his personal tools. It was warm and well lit, much better than the cold storage areas where the station security would have put the dragon. Jake locked the door and turned off the security cameras. He did not want anyone bothering them while he tried to help the creature. The dragon's eyes were closed, but Jake could still feel its presence in his mind. The telepathic connection was weak but steady, like a quiet voice in the back of his thoughts. He could sense the creature's pain and exhaustion. It needed rest and medical care, but Jake was not a doctor. Jake opened his emergency medical kit and looked at the basic supplies inside. There were bandages, pain medicine, and antiseptic, but nothing designed for a creature this size. He would have to improvise and hope for the best. He started by cleaning the wounds with antiseptic. The dragon's skin was tough, but the energy weapons had cut deep. Jake worked carefully, trying not to cause more pain. The dragon never moved or made a sound, but Jake could feel its gratitude through their mental link. As Jake worked, he tried to understand what had happened to the creature. The wounds were clearly from a planned attack. Someone had targeted the dragon specifically, using weapons designed to cripple rather than kill. This was not a random act of violence. Jake wrapped the worst wounds with bandages and gave the dragon some pain medicine through an injection. He was not sure if human medicine would work on an alien, but he had to try something. The dragon's breathing became slower and deeper, which Jake hoped was a good sign. For the next 3 days, Jake took care of the dragon. He brought it water and food, though he was not sure what it normally ate. The creature seemed to like the protein bars from Jake's emergency supplies, so he shared his food with it. Jake also talked to the dragon, even though he was not sure if it understood his words. "I know you can hear me somehow," Jake said while changing the bandages. "I don't know what happened to you, but you're safe now. I'm going to figure out how to help you walk again." The dragon's eyes opened and looked at Jake. Through their mental connection, Jake felt something that surprised him. It was amusement. The dragon thought Jake's promise was funny, but not in a mean way. It was the kind of gentle humor used with children who make impossible claims. Jake felt a flash of annoyance. "You don't think I can do it?" This time the feeling from the dragon was clearer. Jake sensed complex thoughts and emotions that he could barely understand. The dragon was very old and had seen many things. It knew about medicine and healing. It also knew that its spine was damaged beyond repair, but there was something else. In the dragon's thoughts, curiosity, it was interested in Jake's confidence and determination. Most creatures would have given up hope by now, but Jake seemed to believe that any problem could be solved. On the 4th day, the dragon tried to communicate more directly. Jake was adjusting some equipment when he felt a strong pressure in his mind. Suddenly, he could sense the dragon's thoughts more clearly. Images flashed through Jake's consciousness. He saw the dragon flying through space, its powerful wings carrying it between stars. He saw a ship full of creatures that looked like humans but with gray skin and red eyes. These were the pirates who had attacked the dragon. Jake watched the memory like a movie in his mind. The pirates had used special weapons that sent energy beams designed to cut nerve pathways. They wanted to capture the dragon alive but helpless. Dragons were valuable, Jake realized. They were intelligent and powerful, making them perfect slaves if they could be controlled. But something had gone wrong with the pirates' plan. Their ship had been damaged in the fight, and they had been forced to abandon the dragon on the dead planet below the mining station. They probably thought the dragon would die slowly from its injuries. The dragon's name came to Jake through their mental link. Valtharion. It was an ancient name that meant bright flame in the dragon's language. Valtharion had lived for over 200 years and had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. Jake also learned that dragons were not supposed to be helpless. Valtharian people believed that a dragon who could not fly should choose to die with honor rather than live as a cripple. This was why Valtharion had been amused by Jake's promise to help. No one had ever tried to repair a paralyzed dragon before. Well, they never met a human mechanic before, Jake said out loud. "I fix things for a living, that's what I do." Valtharian's thoughts touched Jake's mind again. The dragon was curious about humans. It had heard of them but had never met one before. Humans were considered a young and primitive species by most of the galaxy. They had only been traveling in space for a few hundred years, which was nothing compared to the thousands of years that dragons had been flying between stars. But Valtharion was beginning to understand that humans might be different from other species in important ways. Jake's refusal to accept the injury as permanent was unlike anything the dragon had experienced before. Other species would have either killed Valtharion quickly or left it to die. Only Jake had tried to heal the wounds and make plans for recovery. Jake spent the next few days studying Valtharion's injury more carefully. He used his tools to scan the damaged area and map the nerve pathways. What he found was both encouraging and frustrating. The energy weapons had cut through the main nerve bundle that controlled the dragon's back legs and tail, but they had not destroyed the nerves completely. The problem was that the nerves had been severed in a way that prevented them from healing naturally. The cuts were too clean and too wide. The nerve endings could not reach each other to reconnect, but Jake began to see possibilities that others might have missed. He worked with electronic systems every day, repairing broken connections and replacing DMAGED cables. The dragon's nervous system was biological rather than electronic, but maybe the same principles could apply. What if I could build a bridge? Jake asked Valtharion. Something to carry the signals across the damaged area? Valtharion's thoughts were skeptical. The dragon's people had advanced medical knowledge, but they had never tried anything like what Jake was suggesting. It seemed impossible to mix mechanical systems with living tissue, but Jake was already making plans. He had access to the station's biomedical equipment, which was used to treat injured miners. He also had electronic components from the mining machinery. If he could find a way to combine them, he might be able to create a device that could restore the connection between Valtharion's brain and its paralyzed limbs. The more Jake thought about it, the more excited he became. This was the kind of challenge he loved, a problem that seemed impossible but might have a solution if he was clever enough to find it. Valtharion watched Jake work with growing interest. The dragon had never seen such determination before. Jake did not seem to understand that what he was attempting was impossible. He approached the problem like any other repair job, breaking it down into smaller parts and looking for practical solutions. Through their mental link, Valtharion began to share technical knowledge about dragon biology and nerve function. The dragon's people had studied their own bodies for thousands of years, and Valtharion knew things about nerve signals and brain function that human science had not yet discovered. Working together, Jake and Valtharion began to design something that had never been attempted before. It would be part machine and part biological, a bridge between two different kinds of technology. Jake would handle the mechanical engineering, while Valtharion would provide the biological knowledge. As they worked, their friendship grew stronger. Jake learned to understand Valtharion's complex thoughts and emotions, while the dragon began to appreciate human creativity and stubbornness. They were very different creatures, but they shared the same goal. Jake stayed up late every night, working on designs and calculations. Valtharion rested during the day, but became more alert and active in the evenings when Jake was working. They made an odd pair, a young human mechanic and an ancient alien dragon. United by hope and determination, neither of them knew if their plan would work, but they both believed it was worth trying. For Jake, it was another engineering challenge. For Valtharion, it was something far more important. It was the first time in the dragon's long life that someone had refused to give up on helping it. Jake worked on his secret project for 2 weeks, hiding his activities from the station crew. Every day he told his supervisor that he was doing routine maintenance, but instead he was gathering parts and materials for Valtharion's neural bridge. The dragon rested in Jake's workshop, growing stronger but still unable to move its back legs. The hardest part was getting the right components without raising suspicion. Jake needed biocompatible materials that would not be rejected by Valtharion's body. He also needed advanced processors that could translate nerve signals into electronic impulses and back again. These parts were not normally available on a mining station. Jake found creative solutions to every problem. He took biosensors from the medical bay, claiming they needed calibration. He salvaged quantum processors from damaged mining equipment. He even used parts from his own personal devices, taking apart his communication unit and entertainment system. The station's computer system tracked all equipment and supplies, but Jake had learned to work around the monitoring systems. He made false entries in the maintenance logs and created fake repair orders. He was careful to take only small amounts of materials at a time, so no one would notice what was missing. Valtharion watched Jake work with fascination. The dragon had never seen such resourcefulness before. Jake could look at any piece of equipment and imagine how it could be used for something completely different. A navigation sensor became a nerve signal detector. A power regulator became a bioelectric converter. "Your people are remarkable," Valtharion said through their mental link. "You see possibilities where others see only limitations." Jake smiled as he wired together another component. "That's what humans do. We're too stubborn to accept that something can't be fixed." The neural bridge design was complex, requiring Jake to learn about biology, electronics, and medical procedures all at the same time. He spent hours every night studying technical manuals and research papers. Valtharion helped by sharing dragon knowledge about nerve function and healing processes. Dragons had a different nervous system than humans. Their nerves carried both electrical and chemical signals, making them faster and more efficient than human nerves. But this also made them harder to repair. Jake had to design a bridge that could handle both types of signals without damaging the surrounding tissue. The breakthrough came when Jake realized he could use the station's mining laser technology. The lasers were designed to cut through rock with extreme precision, but Jake found a way to reverse the process. Instead of cutting, the modified laser could fuse materials together at the microscopic level. I can use the laser to connect the bridge directly to your nerve endings, Jake explained to Valtharion. It will be like welding, but on a scale so small that your body won't even notice the foreign material. Valtharion was nervous about the procedure. Dragons healed differently than humans, and there was no way to know if Jake's bridge would work with dragon biology. But the alternative was spending the rest of its life paralyzed. And Valtharion trusted Jake's abilities. Jake practiced the procedure on synthetic materials first, making sure he could control the laser with the precision needed for biological work. He created dozens of test bridges, each one better than the last. He worked with microscopic tools and high-powered magnification, learning to perform surgery at the cellular level. The neural bridge itself was a marvel of engineering. It was only 3 inches long but contained over 1 million microscopic connections. The bridge had processors that could learn and adapt to Valtharion's specific nerve patterns. It also had backup systems in case some of the connections failed. Jake built the bridge using a combination of organic and synthetic materials. The organic parts would integrate with Valtharion's tissue, while the synthetic parts would handle the electronic processing. The entire device was powered by the dragon's own bioelectric field, so it would never need batteries or external power, but Jake knew that building the bridge was only half the challenge. Installing it would be the real test of his skills. He would have to perform surgery on a conscious dragon, working inside its spinal column while avoiding damage to other organs. One mistake could kill Valtharion or make its condition even worse. Jake prepared for the surgery by practicing on simulation models. He used the station's 3D printer to create exact replicas of Valtharion's spinal structure. He practiced the procedure hundreds of times until he could do it perfectly with his eyes closed. Valtharion helped Jake prepare by sharing detailed information about dragon anatomy. The dragon's spine was different from a human spine, with additional nerve clusters that controlled flight muscles. Jake had to learn the location of every nerve bundle and blood vessel in the surgical area. The night before the surgery, Jake could barely sleep. He reviewed his plans one more time, checking every detail. The neural bridge was ready, his tools were prepared, and he had memorized every step of the procedure. But he was still nervous. This was the most important repair job of his life. Valtharion was calm and confident. The dragon had complete faith in Jake's abilities. Through their mental link, Jake could feel the dragon's trust and determination. Valtharion was ready to risk everything for the chance to walk again. "Are you sure about this?" Jake asked. "Once I start, there's no going back." "I have lived for 200 years, Valtharion replied. "I have seen stars born and die. I have flown through nebulae and danced with comets. If I die trying to fly again, that is better than living without hope." Jake began the surgery early in the morning when the station was quiet. He had told his supervisor that he was sick and could not work that day. The workshop was sealed and private, with no chance of interruption. Jake started by giving Valtharion a local anesthetic to numb the surgical area. Dragon medicine was different from human medicine, but Jake had learned to adapt the drugs to work with dragon biology. Valtharion remained conscious, but could not feel pain in the surgery site. The first step was to open the skin and muscle layers to reach the damaged spine. Jake worked slowly and carefully, using tools designed for microscopic work. Every cut was precise, every movement planned. He could not afford to make any mistakes. When Jake reached the spinal column, he could see the damage clearly. The energy weapons had cut through the main nerve bundle, leaving a gap that was too wide for natural healing. The nerve endings were healthy, but they could not reach each other across the damaged area. Jake positioned the neural bridge carefully, aligning it with the severed nerve endings. The bridge was designed to fit exactly into the gap, connecting the upper and lower sections of the spinal cord. But installing it required Jake to work with tools so small that he could barely see them, using the modified mining laser. Jake began to fuse the bridge to Valtharian-S nerve tissue. The laser operated at such a low power that it produced no heat or visible light. Jake worked by feel and instinct, trusting his experience with precision equipment. The procedure took 6 hours. Jake's hands were steady throughout the surgery, but his mind was racing with worry. Every connection had to be perfect. Every nerve fiber had to be aligned correctly. There was no room for error. Valtharian remained calm during the entire procedure, providing Jake with mental feedback about sensations and nerve activity. The dragon could feel the bridge being installed, and it reported every change to Jake through their telepathic connection. Finally, Jake completed the last connection and stepped back. The neural bridge was installed and active. The synthetic components were processing nerve signals and translating them across the damaged area. But Jake would not know if the surgery was successful until Valtharian tried to move. "How do you feel?" Jake asked. Valtharian concentrated, trying to send signals to its paralyzed limbs. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the dragon's tail moved slightly. It was just a small twitch, but it was the first voluntary movement Valtharian had made in weeks. "It works," Valtharian said, its mental voice filled with amazement. "I can feel my legs again," Jake smiled, exhausted but triumphant. He had done something that the galaxy's best doctors said was impossible. He had taken a paralyzed dragon and given it hope for a normal life again, but the real test was still to come. The neural bridge was working, but Jake did not know if it would continue to work as Valtharian-S body healed. The next few days would determine if Jake's innovation was truly successful or just a temporary fix. Jake cleaned and bandaged the surgical site, then helped Valtharian get comfortable. The dragon was tired from the long procedure, but its spirits were higher than they had been since the attack. For the first time in weeks, Valtharian had reason to believe it might fly again. For 3 days after the surgery, Jake watched Valtharian closely. The dragon could move its tail and feel sensations in its back legs, but it still could not stand or walk. Jake worried that the neural bridge was not working properly, or that he had made a mistake during the installation. Valtharian was patient and encouraging. The dragon explained that nerve healing took time, especially with such a complex injury. The bridge was working, but Valtharian-S muscles had been paralyzed for weeks. They needed time to remember how to move properly. "Your people heal quickly," Valtharian told Jake through their mental link. "Dragons heal slowly but completely. Give my body time to accept your gift." On the 4th day, something remarkable happened. Jake was checking the surgical site when Valtharian suddenly lifted one of its back legs. The movement was shaky and weak, but it was definitely voluntary. The dragon was learning to walk again. Jake felt tears in his eyes as he watched Valtharian struggle to coordinate its movements. The neural bridge was not just working, it was working better than Jake had hoped. The dragon's natural healing abilities were combining with the artificial bridge to create something new and powerful. Over the next week, Valtharian-S progress was amazing. The dragon went from moving one leg to moving both legs to finally standing up on all 4 limbs. Jake had to help support the dragon's weight at first, but each day Valtharian grew stronger and more confident. The neural bridge was adapting to Valtharian-S biology in ways that Jake had not expected. The device was learning the dragon's movement patterns and optimizing its signal processing. It was becoming more than just a replacement for damaged nerves. It was becoming an enhancement. Jake noticed that Valtharian-S reflexes were faster than before the injury. The dragon could react to stimuli almost instantly, as if the bridge was processing nerve signals more efficiently than the original biological connections. This was an unexpected benefit of combining organic and synthetic systems. I feel different, Valtharion admitted to Jake. Not just healed, but improved. Your bridge gives me capabilities I never had before. Jake was fascinated by this development. He had designed the bridge to restore normal function, but it seemed to be doing much more than that. The combination of dragon biology and human engineering had created something entirely new, but Jake's secret project could not stay hidden forever. On the 10th day after the surgery, Station Security Chief Ryan Cole came to Jake's workshop with 2 guards. They had been monitoring unusual power usage in Jake's quarters and wanted to investigate. "Open the door, Jake," Cole called out. "We know you're hiding something in there." Jake looked at Valtharion, who was now strong enough to stand and walk around the workshop. There was no way to hide a 12-foot dragon, and Jake was tired of keeping secrets anyway. "Okay," Jake said, opening the door. "But don't do anything." Stupid. Cole and his guards stepped into the workshop and stopped in shock. They had expected to find stolen equipment or illegal experiments. They had not expected to find a living dragon. "What the hell is that thing?" Cole demanded, reaching for his weapon. "Don't point that at my friend," Jake said firmly. "This is Valtharion. I've been helping it recover from injuries." Valtharion stood up to its full height, towering over the humans. The dragon's presence filled the room with an aura of ancient power and intelligence. But instead of threatening the security team, Valtharion spoke to them telepathically. All 3 security officers stumbled backward as Valtharion's mental voice touched their minds. The dragon's communication was gentle but impossible to ignore. It introduced itself and explained how Jake had saved its life. "It's talking to me," Cole whispered in amazement. "Inside my head, Jake fixed my spine," Valtharion told them. "He built a bridge to reconnect my severed nerves. No other being in the galaxy has ever attempted such a thing." Cole looked at Jake with new respect. "You did surgery on this creature? How is that even possible?" Jake explained his neural bridge design and the surgical procedure he had performed. He showed Cole the technical specifications and the medical scans that proved the bridge was working perfectly. Cole was not an engineer, but even he could understand that Jake had accomplished something incredible. "We have to report this to headquarters," Cole said. "They need to know what you've done here." Within hours, the news of Jake's achievement spread throughout the space station. The crew gathered in the main corridor to see the walking dragon for themselves. Most had never seen an alien larger than a house cat, and Valtharion was an impressive sight, but the real excitement came when the station's communication array lit up with incoming messages. Word of Jake's breakthrough had reached the galactic medical community, and doctors from dozens of species wanted to know more about the neural bridge technology. Dr. Lisa Shawn, the station's medical officer, was the first to arrive at Jake's workshop. She examined Valtharion's surgical site and reviewed Jake's technical documentation with growing amazement. "This is revolutionary," Dr. Chun told Jake. "You've created an interface between biological and synthetic systems that shouldn't be possible." "How did you know it would work?" "I didn't," Jake admitted. "I just knew it was worth trying." Dr. Chun shook her head in disbelief. "Jake, you're a mechanic, not a doctor. You had no formal medical training, no advanced laboratory equipment, and no research team. Yet you've solved a problem that has stumped our best neurosurgeons for centuries." More experts arrived over the following days. Scientists, doctors, and engineers came from across the galaxy to study Jake's neural bridge. They brought advanced scanning equipment and ran hundreds of tests on both the device and Valtharion. The results amazed everyone. The neural bridge was not just functional, it was perfect. The device had integrated completely with Valtharion's nervous system, creating hybrid pathways that were stronger and faster than the original biological connections. Professor Marcus Webb, a renowned expert in biomechanical engineering, spent 3 days studying Jake's design. Finally, he called Jake aside for a private conversation. "I've been working in this field for 30 years, Professor Webb said. "I've seen the most advanced research facilities and the most brilliant minds in the galaxy. But I've never seen anything like what you've accomplished here." "It's just good engineering," Jake replied modestly. No, it's much more than that, Professor Webb insisted. You've created something that bridges the gap between biology and technology in a way that no one thought possible. This could revolutionize medicine for every species in the galaxy. The attention was overwhelming for Jake. He had never wanted to be famous. He just wanted to help his friend. But now reporters were calling him the greatest medical innovator of the century, and universities were offering him jobs he could never have imagined. Valtharion was dealing with attention too. Dragons were considered extinct by most of the galaxy, and suddenly there was a living dragon on a remote mining station. Xenobiologists wanted to study Valtharian S species, while historians wanted to learn about dragon civilization, but Valtharion was more interested in testing its restored abilities. The dragon had been walking for 2 weeks, and now it wanted to try flying. Jake was nervous about this, but Valtharion was confident that the neural bridge would handle the complex coordination required for flight. They went to the station's cargo bay, the largest open space available. Valtharion spread its wings for the first time since the attack. The wings were magnificent, spanning nearly 20 feet from tip to tip. The dragon's white scales caught the light like precious gems. Valtharion flapped its wings experimentally, testing the neural connections to the flight muscles. The movements were smooth and powerful, with no sign of the paralysis that had crippled the dragon just weeks before. Then, with a mighty leap, Valtharion launched itself into the air. The dragon flew around the cargo bay with grace and power, performing aerial maneuvers that demonstrated perfect control. The neural bridge was handling the complex signals required for flight without any problems. Jake watched with pride and amazement as his friend soared through the air. The wounded, paralyzed creature he had found in the darkness had become a magnificent flying dragon once again. Jake had kept his promise to help Valtharion walk, but he had given the dragon much more than that. He had given it hope, friendship, and a new kind of strength. When Valtharion landed, the dragon's joy and gratitude filled Jake's mind through their telepathic connection. For the first time since they had met, Valtharion felt truly alive again. "Thank you," Valtharion said, both aloud and mentally. "You have given me more than my life back. You have shown me that impossible things can become possible when someone cares enough to try." Jake smiled, feeling more satisfied than he had ever felt in his life. He had proven that human determination and ingenuity could overcome any obstacle, even ones that the rest of the galaxy considered hopeless. 6 months after Valtharion's successful surgery, Jake's life had changed completely. He was no longer just a mechanic on a remote mining station. He was now the director of the galaxy's first biomechanical medical center, built in a space station near the edge of human territory. The new medical center was impressive. It had the most advanced equipment from dozens of different species, all designed to help Jake develop his neural bridge technology further. Scientists and doctors from across the galaxy came to learn from Jake, and to bring their most difficult cases to his facility. Jake wore a simple jumpsuit instead of the fancy clothes that other famous people wore. He still preferred to work with his hands and get dirty fixing problems. But now his workshop was 10 times larger, and he had a team of brilliant assistants helping him with each case. Valtharion had become Jake's partner in every sense. The dragon helped design new versions of the neural bridge for different species. Each alien race had different biology, so Jake and Valtharion had to create custom solutions for every patient. The Zephyrians have 3 separate nervous systems, Valtharion explained to Jake as they worked on their latest case. "We will need a bridge that can coordinate all 3 networks simultaneously." Jake nodded, studying the anatomical diagrams on his computer screen. "I think I can modify the processor array to handle multiple signal types. It will be like conducting an orchestra instead of playing a single instrument." Their first successful case had been a young Centaurian pilot who had been paralyzed in a racing accident. The neural bridge technology worked perfectly for the horse-like alien, restoring not only movement but also the incredible speed reflexes that Centaurians were famous for. Word of that success brought more patients. A crystalline engineer whose light-based nervous system had been damaged by solar radiation an aquatic nereid whose pressure-sensitive nerves had been crushed in a deep-sea accident. Each case was different, each solution unique. Jake's reputation grew with every successful treatment. He became known as the human who could fix the unfixable. But more importantly, he became known as someone who never gave up on a patient. No matter how hopeless their case seemed, the medical center received a special visitor one day. Commander Patricia Hayes of the Galactic Medical Council arrived with an official delegation to observe Jake's work. She was a stern woman who had initially been skeptical of reports about a human mechanic performing miracle surgeries. "Show me this neural bridge technology," Commander Hayes said when she met Jake in his laboratory. "I want to understand how." A maintenance worker became the galaxy's most innovative surgeon. Jake demonstrated the bridge construction process, explaining each step in simple terms. He showed Commander Hayes how he combined biological and synthetic materials, how he programmed the processors to learn individual nerve patterns, and how he performed the microscopic surgery required for installation. Commander Hayes watched everything with growing amazement. She had expected to find crude jury-rigged devices held together with spare parts. Instead, she found technology that was more advanced than anything produced by the galaxy's top research facilities. "This is impossible," she said finally. "These bridges are more sophisticated than devices we've been developing for decades." "How did you learn to build them?" "I didn't learn," Jake replied honestly. "I figured it out as I went along. Every patient teaches me something new about how to make the bridges work better." Commander Hayes spent 3 days at the medical center, observing Jake's work and interviewing his patients. She spoke with beings from dozens of different species, all of whom had been helped by Jake's technology. Their stories were remarkable. A volcanic salamander, whose heat-conducting nerves had been damaged, was now able to work in molten lava again. A gas giant floater whose pressure-sensitive navigation system had been broken could now soar through the clouds of their home world. An insectoid hive worker, whose collective consciousness link had been severed, was reconnected to their family group. But the most impressive case was an elderly quantum drake whose interdimensional travel abilities had been lost due to nerve damage. Jake had created a bridge that not only restored the drake's natural abilities but actually enhanced them. The drake could now travel between dimensions more easily than ever before. Each success brings us closer to understanding the fundamental principles of consciousness and nerve function, Valtharian told Commander Hayes. Jake's approach is intuitive rather than theoretical. He sees solutions that trained scientists miss because they are too focused on established rules. Commander Hayes filed a report that changed galactic policy toward human medical research. She recommended that Jake be given unlimited resources and official recognition as a medical pioneer of the first rank. This was an honor that had never been given to a human before. The recognition brought unexpected consequences. 3 weeks after Commander Hayes' visit, a massive ship appeared near the medical center. It was unlike any vessel Jake had ever seen, with elegant curves and surfaces that seemed to shift color in the light. "Those are my people," Valtharian said, excitement filling their mental link. "The Sirethkai have come." Jake watched through the viewing ports as the dragon ship approached. He had assumed that Valtharian was alone in the galaxy, one of the last survivors of an extinct race. But apparently the dragons had been hiding rather than dying out. A delegation of 5 dragons came aboard the medical center. They were all different colors: gold, silver, deep blue, emerald green, and black. Each was as magnificent as Valtharian. But they carried themselves with an ancient dignity that spoke of thousands of years of civilization. The leader of the delegation was an enormous golden dragon named Arthalan. He was over 300 years old and spoke with the authority of someone who had seen empires rise and fall. "We have watched from the shadows for many centuries," Arthalan told Jake through telepathic communication. "We withdrew from Galactic affairs long ago because we believed the younger races were too primitive to understand us." Jake felt honored but also nervous. He was being judged by beings who were older and more advanced than humanity itself. "But Valtharian's reports have changed our perspective," Arthalan continued. You have demonstrated capabilities that we did not expect from humans. You saved one of our own when we would have considered him beyond help." The golden dragon turned to look at Veltharion, who stood proudly beside Jake. "More than that, you have improved him. The neural bridge you created has enhanced his natural abilities in ways we never imagined possible." Our Thalen made a formal announcement that shocked Jake and surprised the entire galactic community. The Sirethkai were ending their isolation and forming an official alliance with humanity. They would share their advanced knowledge in exchange for human innovation and friendship. "We have technology that your species can use," our Thalen explained. "Faster than light travel, energy manipulation, matter conversion. But you have something we lack, the ability to see new possibilities and refuse to accept limitations." The alliance agreement was signed in a ceremony aboard the dragon ship. Jake represented humanity, even though he had never been appointed as a diplomat. Veltharion served as translator and advisor, helping both sides understand each other's perspectives. The dragons shared star maps showing the locations of their hidden colonies throughout the galaxy. There were thousands of Sirethkai living in secret, waiting for the right time to rejoin galactic civilization. Jake's act of kindness toward one injured dragon had convinced them that humans could be trusted, but the alliance was not just about politics and technology. It was about friendship and mutual respect. Jake continued to run his medical center, but now he had dragon colleagues working alongside him. Together, they developed new treatments and technologies that helped beings throughout the galaxy. Jake often thought about the night he had found Veltharion lying wounded in the darkness. If he had followed orders and left the dragon to die, none of this would have happened. The medical center would not exist, the dragons would still be in hiding, and thousands of patients would never have been healed. One evening, as Jake watched Veltharion flying outside the medical center, he received a distress signal from a distant system. An unknown alien species was requesting help with injuries that their own doctors could not treat. Jake smiled and reached for his tools. Veltharion landed nearby, ready to accompany his friend on another rescue mission. They had proven that any problem could be solved with enough determination and compassion. They had also proven that the greatest strength humans brought to the galaxy was not their technology or their weapons, but their refusal to give up on others. As their ship departed for the distress signal, Jake felt grateful for the simple decision he had made months ago. He had chosen to help instead of walking away, and that choice had changed everything. It had brought two species together, created new medical miracles, and shown the galaxy that hope was always worth fighting for. The medical center continued its work, treating patients from species that had never been seen before. Jake's neural bridge technology became the foundation for a new era of cross-species cooperation and healing.